Ever since my daughter had this experience, every night, before she sleeps, she holds my hand and says, "Mom, I hope they're listening. Hope you told them all I saw." This is the reason I become restless and choose to reveal this experience. And that is what I leave with you today. Please, listen. Pray. Forgive. Love. And prepare your heart. This message you are about to hear is urgent, more urgent than anything I have ever shared before. As a mother, I am not speaking to gain attention or make anyone afraid, but because what my daughter saw shook me to my very soul. I have prayed before deciding to speak, and I believe with all my heart that this message is meant for every believer who still listens to the voice of the Spirit in these final days. Before I continue with what she saw, let me say this to you, brothers and sisters, please listen with an open heart. I am not here to force anyone to believe, but to share what was shown to an innocent child. The same Spirit that spoke through children in the Bible can still reveal His truth today. Now, before I share her experience, I want to ask everyone watching, please comment where you're watching from. We want to join our hearts and prayers together, no matter the nation, no matter the language. This is not just another video, this is a call to prepare, to pray, and to stand together in faith. Because what Abigail saw, it's not something you will easily forget. My name is Grace Thompson, and I live in Virginia, United States of America. I am a mother of 2 children, Michael, who is 9 years old, and Abigail, who is 12. Abigail is the reason I am speaking to you today. She is a bright, humble, and God-fearing girl who loves to sing in the children's choir at our local church. But on the 8th of October, 2025, something happened that changed her life, and mine, completely. That evening, after our family devotion, Abigail went upstairs to bring down a small Bible storybook she had forgotten in her room. As she turned to come down, her younger brother accidentally called her from behind, and she missed a step. It wasn't a big fall, but when she hit the floor, she suddenly went quiet and still. We rushed to her side, thinking she had just fainted. But as minutes passed and she didn't respond, fear filled my heart. We called her name again and again, Abigail. Abby! But there was no movement, no sound. She was rushed to the hospital immediately. The doctors did all they could, but for several minutes, they said she had no pulse. Yet, somehow, after what felt like forever, she gasped suddenly and opened her eyes. But before anyone could speak, Abigail began to cry. She wasn't in pain. It was a cry that sounded heavy, like she had seen something far beyond what a child could fall. She said it was like everything went quiet, too quiet. She didn't feel pain, didn't feel her body, and didn't even know she had fallen. She said the moment she hit the ground, she tried to open her eyes but couldn't find herself on earth anymore. She told me it was like waking up in another world, one that looked nothing like the hospital or our home. She found herself standing on something smooth and white, brighter than snow but soft under her feet, almost like standing on light itself. She said there was no sun, yet everything was bright. Abigail said she looked around and saw no buildings, no people, no trees, only a great plain that stretched endlessly. She told me she tried to speak, but no words came out. It was then she realized that she could understand things without anyone saying them, thoughts, meanings, feelings, all clear without sound. She said something inside her told her she wasn't dead, but she wasn't on earth either. It was a place between. Then, far ahead of her, she began to see colors, bright, beautiful colors arranged in perfect squares that stretched across the white plain. As she moved closer, she realized they weren't just colors. They were flags, flags of nations, each one carefully placed inside a neat box drawn on the floor. The boxes were equal in size, separated by thin golden lines that shone like fire. Abigail said she didn't know why, but she understood immediately that what she was seeing had to do with the nations of the earth. She said suddenly, a great stillness fell over the plain. Then she saw something descend from above, like a light taking the shape of a person. She couldn't see his face clearly because it was too bright, but she could tell it was an angel. He was tall, dressed in something that shone like polished silver. Abigail said she didn't know who sent him, but she somehow knew he had a task, something important to do with those flags. And as she watched, the angel stretched out his hand and began to move among the nations. She told me that he didn't speak, yet every action he made carried a deep meaning. One by one, he started lifting the flags from the ground. When a flag was lifted, the square it came from glowed with bright white light that faded gently into the air. As each flag rose, Abigail expected to see something underneath, maybe words or symbols, but to her surprise, there was nothing. Only emptiness. She said that as the angel went from one flag to another, she began to recognize some of them. She saw flags she'd seen in her geography book: Canada, France, Brazil, China, Israel, the United Kingdom, Kenya, South Africa, Germany, Japan, and so many others. All of them were lifted. The angel kept moving until he had gone through almost all the flags. When he finally stopped, she looked around and realized that only 3 flags were left lying on the plain, 3 that hadn't been touched at all. They were the flags of America, Nigeria, and India. She said the angel stood silently for a while, facing those 3 flags. Then he looked upward, and though Abigail couldn't see who he was looking at, she could tell he was listening. It was as if he was receiving instruction from a voice that was higher, greater, and unseen. Abigail said that the moment the angel's hand lifted the Nigerian flag, she said she saw blood, fresh, thick, and flowing, covering the whole ground where the flag had been. It wasn't just drops, it was a pool, spreading in every direction, red and glistening. She told me that as she stared at the blood, another vision opened before her eyes, like a screen of light forming in front of her. And inside that vision, she began to see scenes from the nation of Nigeria. She saw villages burning, people running, and churches destroyed. She saw believers crying out for help, but their voices were swallowed by gunshots and flames. She saw men and women hiding, praying, and still holding their faith even when surrounded by danger. Abigail said she understood that what she was seeing was persecution, a heavy one. She said there were groups of people and leaders who had turned against Christians, and that this pain had been growing quietly without much attention from the world. She said the persecution was not only from outside but also from within: divisions, betrayals, and hatred that made believers weak and scattered. As she watched, Abigail said she began to cry and asked in her heart why no one was talking about this suffering. She said it felt as though heaven had been listening to the cries of believers in Nigeria for a long time, waiting for the right moment to answer. Then suddenly, she said the light around her changed again. From the skies above the Nigerian flag, 3 great lights began to descend, each one shining brighter than the sun. When they touched the ground, she saw that they were 3 angels, tall and mighty, their robes flowing like flames of gold. The moment they arrived, the noise of persecution, the cries, the pain, the chaos, all stopped instantly. She said she didn't hear them speak, but she felt something powerful move through her spirit, a message that heaven had finally released judgment to end the persecution of the church in Nigeria. She said she could sense that these angels were not only coming to comfort, but also to bring justice and restoration to those who had suffered for righteousness. After that, one of the angels lifted something that looked like a calendar, glowing with golden light. Abigail said the angel turned it so she could see it clearly. On the calendar, she saw the month of October 2025, but almost all the days were filled with light, except from the 23rd onward through November, where the dates were left blank, completely empty. She said she felt an understanding come into her heart, that those empty days were not forgotten, but set apart. She was made to know that those dates are when heaven's justice would begin, when God would move to bring an end to the persecution and expose the evil that had been hidden for long. After that, the angel carefully placed the Nigerian flag back down, but this time, the blood beneath it began to dry up. The redness turned into something clear, like water, and then disappeared into the white floor. Abigail said that after the angel placed the Nigerian flag back down, the angel slowly turned toward the second flag that was left on the ground, the flag of the United States of America. She said she watched closely, expecting to see the same kind of scene she had seen under the Nigerian flag, maybe more blood, or tears, or fire. But when the angel began to lift the American flag, what appeared beneath it shocked her in a different way. She said it wasn't blood or fire. Instead, she saw worms, thousands of them, crawling in every direction, small but fast, moving like something had disturbed them. Abigail said it made her feel uneasy. She could sense that the worms were not ordinary, they represented something living but hidden, things that had been buried deep for a long time but were now being forced to the surface. She said it was as if the earth itself was uncovering secrets that had been sealed away. Then, she said, without hearing words, she understood what it meant. She said it came into her heart that these worms stood for hidden things, corruption, lies, secret plans, and dark truths buried beneath the nation's image. She said the angel let her know that there would soon be a great uncovering in America, a revealing of secrets, both in the government and in systems that had deceived people for many years. Abigail said it wasn't just about politics or leaders, it was about the whole structure of deception, things that were meant to destroy truth and weaken faith. She said she was made to understand that God would allow certain things to be exposed not to destroy the nation, but to heal it. The uncovering would be painful for some, shocking for many, but it would bring cleansing. She said she saw flashes of paper, screens, and people shouting, as if big truths were being broadcast everywhere. She said she could feel confusion, but behind it all, there was a purpose. The worms weren't there to remain, they were being exposed so they could be destroyed. She said the angel then moved his hand slightly, and light began to flow down from above onto the worms. The moment the light touched them, they started disappearing one after another, melting into the brightness. When all were gone, the ground beneath the flag became clean again, smooth and white as before. Abigail said the angel then looked at the flag of America and let it stay lifted in the air for a few moments. She said she could feel that this was a message, that God's hand was still upon the nation, but it was time for truth to shine and darkness to be removed. She said she also understood that the timing of this uncovering would happen around the same period marked on the calendar she saw earlier, from the 23rd of October onward. It would be a time when many would be forced to face the truth, and the light of God would begin to separate lies from righteousness. Then the angel gently placed the flag of America back down. Abigail said that after the angel placed the American flag back in its place, then, the angel turned toward the last flag lying on the ground, the flag of India. Abigail said as soon as the angel moved his hand toward it, she felt something beautiful rise within her, something she couldn't describe with words. She said it felt like praise, deep, pure praise that came from the ground itself. When the angel lifted the Indian flag, the light beneath it burst forth so bright that Abigail covered her eyes. She said it wasn't painful to look at, but it was powerful, full of color and movement. She said she saw people everywhere, standing, singing, and clapping, their faces shining as they worshipped. Some were outside, others were inside small rooms or basements, but they were all worshipping the same way, with joy that couldn't be contained. Abigail said she was made to understand that these were believers in India, many of them part of underground churches that had been praying and meeting secretly. She said their worship began to rise like waves of light across the land, and the more they sang, the brighter the nation became. Then she said she saw something like fire, but it wasn't burning to destroy. It was spiritual fire, spreading from one person to another, like hearts catching flame. Wherever the fire reached, people began to lift their hands and call on the name of the Lord. She said it was as if heaven was pouring out revival upon the whole land, and no one could stop it. She told me she could also see people of different religions and backgrounds joining in. She said she saw men and women who once didn't know Jesus now standing among believers, weeping and singing. She said she could feel God's joy watching over them, a joy so full it made her cry. Abigail said the angel let her know that from the 23rd of October onward, there would begin a great spiritual awakening in India, not one created by people, but by the Spirit of God Himself. It would start quietly, like a whisper, then spread rapidly across towns and cities. She said underground churches would grow stronger, and more souls would be saved in that season than in many years before. She said she saw pastors and evangelists receiving boldness, miracles happening in hidden places, and children preaching with fire in their voices. It was not about fame or crowds, but about hearts being turned back to God. Abigail told me that while she watched, she began to sing too. She didn't know the song, but the words came naturally, praise that lifted her heart higher and higher until she could hardly breathe. Then the angel smiled, the first time she saw him smile. He placed the flag of India gently back in its place, and the sound of worship continued even after the flag touched the ground. The entire plain began to glow again, brighter and warmer, as if heaven itself was singing with them. Abigail said that after the angel placed the Indian flag back in its place, the brightness around her began to fade slowly. The soft music she heard started to grow distant, and she felt something like a strong wind pulling her backward, gentle, but firm. She said she didn't resist it because she knew her time there was finished. The next thing she felt was darkness, and then, suddenly, noise. She said it was the sound of beeping machines, voices calling her name, and someone crying. When she opened her eyes, she saw me standing beside her hospital bed, my face wet with tears. She said at first she didn't know where she was, but when I held her hand and whispered, "You're back, my baby," she smiled faintly and whispered, "Mom, I saw heaven's warning." That was when I knew it was real. And now, as her mother, I share this with you with trembling hands and a heart full of faith. I know some may doubt or question, but I would rather speak and warn in love than stay silent and regret it later. Brothers and sisters, the time is shorter than we think. What Abigail saw about Nigeria reminds us that God hears the cry of his people and that justice will come, but also that persecution is real and our prayers matter. What she saw about America tells us that truth will not stay buried forever. God will uncover every hidden thing so his light can cleanse what is unclean. And what she saw about India gives us hope that even in the darkest places, revival will bloom and many will find salvation. So wherever you are reading or watching from, I beg you, bow your heart and pray. Pray for your nation. Pray for your church. Pray for the world. These are not times for pride or argument. These are times for love, forgiveness, and holiness. Let us return to God with sincerity. Let us stop fighting one another over who is right and who is wrong. Let us open our Bibles again, teach our children the Word, and keep our homes filled with prayer. Because the things that are coming will test every heart, and only those who walk closely with God will stand firm. If you can hear my voice today, don't harden your heart. Don't think you have tomorrow to fix things. The Lord is still calling. He still saves, he still forgives, and he still wants you close to him. Abigail is doing well now. She smiles again, sings softly when she wakes up, and prays for nations she has never even visited.